I'm Susan Benson. I'm the archivist at Barrow Archives Centre based in Barrow Library, and I'm going to talk about the history of the library service in the borough. The Public Libraries Act of 1850 empowered local councils to establish free libraries to be paid for out of council income. There were restrictions relating to the size of the population and the amount that the council could add to its rates, but it was the first time that there was universal free access to information and literature. The Public Libraries Act was adopted by the Borough Council in 1881 after a petition from local ratepayers. In 1882, the first Barrow Free Library opened in a metal building which was situated where the Holiday Inn now is. It included a men's and ladies' reading room and was lined with wooden panels, and this photograph shows the building. It was opened on the 18th of September 1882 by the Mayor, Alderman Edward Wadden, who recorded in his diary that he spent the morning at work and then in the afternoon at 3 o'clock he opened the free library before going to get his portrait of him as mayor presented to him in the town hall. The Barrow News records that this marks another important event in the history of our town and is, we hope, the stepping stone to those advanced educational facilities which a town like this will require, and which, if we are to hold our own amongst other important towns, it will be necessary to establish at some point or other. The working classes have had placed in their hands an inestimable boon. Books of fiction, travel, science, biography, etc. have been provided, all of which can be studied free of charge. In 1887, the new town hall was opened and the library moved in. The librarian of the time recorded that the most important occurrence this year has been the removal of the books and transfer of business from the temporary building to the large and convenient rooms provided in the new town hall. The rooms are a great improvement both in point of size and comfort on the premises hitherto in use. During the short time that the reading rooms have been open, the attendance of the public has largely increased. The newsroom continues to be popular and a reading room for ladies has been established which was well attended. This postcard of the town hall shows the old library on the left and an arrow pointing to the place in the town hall where the new library was based. In 1913, a letter was received by the Borough Council from the Carnegie Corporation of New York agreeing to give the Borough Council £12,000 towards the cost of a new library. And Andrew Carnegie had been born in Scotland and moved to America as a child. He spent a lot of time in industry and earned an awful lot of money, and he spent the last 18 years of his life spending a lot of that money on large-scale philanthropy, with special emphasis on local libraries, world peace, education and scientific research. A subcommittee was set up to find a site for the new library, and in May 1913, the committee proposed that the north-east corner of Ramsden Square would be the most suitable site for the proposed new library, and that the Finance and Estate Committee be asked to purchase from the Furness Railway Company 1,230 square yards at a rate of £1 per square yard, and 5 houses in Hawk Street from Mr. C.W. Hunter at a price of £1,350. The local government board agreed to lend the council £2,900 for the purchase of the land in November 1913, and the surveyor was instructed to prepare detailed plans and estimates for a scheme for the new public library to cost about £12,000 or thereabouts. And this photograph from Britain above shows where the new library is when it's in the process of being built. Plans for the new library were approved by the council in October 1914, and tenders were invited for the erection of the building on the basis of artificial stone for the front elevation, with alternative tenders for natural stone and the provision of a basement under the lending library. The tender submitted by Messrs Farnish and Sons of Bradford was accepted, £12,736, 12 shillings and 5 pence. In December 1914, the Carnegie Trust agreed to increase its grant to £13,000, with a further grant of £4,500 agreed in 1919. Building work began, but at the meeting on the 5th of September 1916, a letter from the Minister of Munitions was read out, in which he stated that owing to the urgent national requirements, he was unable to grant the licence to continue the building work, but that the council be permitted to carry out protective works as may be absolutely necessary to render the building safe and weatherproof. Building work stopped then until the end of the war, but the date stone of 1915 remains above the front door. The plans that we have from the Borough Council include this one showing the ground floor with the children's library and the reading room, and this one of the upstairs showing the lecture room and the reference library. This postcard shows the library looking across Ramsden Square. On Thursday the 5th of October 1922, the Mayoress, Mrs Walker Fairburn, together with Alderman J.H. Barrow, Chairman of the Library and Museum Committee, officially opened the library. Mr J.A. Charles, the architect, presented Mrs Fairbairn with a large gold key with which she opened the front door. And in this photograph by Sankey, you can see them at the front door, opening the front door. She declared that it was her pleasure to open the library and that she was convinced that the public of Barrow would find themselves possessed of a library second to none in the kingdom. Hordes of people attended the opening of the Barrow Library, as can be seen from this photograph and the next one, both taken by Sankey. After the opening ceremony, Alderman J.H. Brown gave a talk on the history of the library. He explained that the Andrew Carnegie Foundation had given a grant, that the architect was a Barrow man, J.A. Charles, who was to be congratulated upon planning one of the finest libraries in the country. Thanks were also given to the staff of the library, led by Mr Gabbett, who had moved 27,000 volumes from the town hall and set up the new library. Having been involved in moving books for this refurbishment, 27,000 volumes is an awful lot of books to move. The Reverend John Sanderson, a trustee of the Carnegie Foundation, said a fine building was all right, but unless they had books in their library and unless those books were utilised by the inhabitants, then it would prove just a white elephant. To ensure public interest, the committee must make sure of a constant flow of fresh books. This photograph from the 1930s shows the front entrance with the stairs going upstairs and also one of the fine doors and a black and white tiled floor. Upstairs, we have the reference library and the technical library, which later included the local studies library, again a picture from the 1930s. The children's library, downstairs, you originally got into that through the door on Duke Street, and in 1930 the screen between the children's library and the reading room was moved. New round tables with table lamps decorated with scenes from Peter Pan, The Water Babies, Alice in Wonderland and Gulliver's Travels were installed, and this photograph shows those tables with the lamps on. The museum, which moved into the lecture theatre upstairs, was opened on the 5th of October 1930 by Commander Craven, Alderman Bran Longstaff and the Mayor, Alderman J. Winnerer. The Borough Librarian reported that the collection included valuable items relating to natural history and engineering material to stimulate students to study local industries and suggest fresh fields of research. Many people had donated items including flintlock pistols and swords, items from Barrow paper mills, model trains and engines, archaeological finds such as coins, window glass, gargoyles found during work of restoration at Furness Abbey, shells, exhibits from northern Nigeria and models from Vickers, so quite a variety of different items in the museum. In the 1930s, extra storage was added on the side of the building adjacent to the Merking Men's Club, or now known as the House of Lords. The recent refurbishment changed this into meeting rooms on the ground floor and the first floor, but this photograph shows the shelving that we had in what we called the stack until the refurbishment. In 1970, the Borough Surveyor was instructed to draw up plans for improvements to the museum. He suggested extending above the staff area by the children's library to provide extra floors to house a store, activity area, study area, toilets, laboratory and audiovisual room. The elevation shown here seems to have a roofed but open area on top of the extension. Unfortunately, this was not built, and the museum, known as Furness Museum, moved out of the library and when the Dock Museum was opened in the 1990s. There have been branch libraries in the service for a lot of years. In 1903, the librarian's report said that during the year, application was made by the Isle of Walney Estates Company for the establishment of a branch library at Vickerstown. A suitable room being made, the branch was opened to the public in December last year, that was 1902. Some 500 volumes were transferred from the Central Library. There are now 4 branch libraries controlled from the Central Library: Vickerstown Board School, Hawcourt Board School, Roos Board School and the new Vickerstown branch. In 1933, it was decided that they could do with a library in North Lonsdale Hospital. The Barrow librarian reported that it is obvious that residents of Barrow who are unfortunate enough to be in hospital have every right to enjoy library facilities equal to their more fortunate fellow citizens. So 150 carefully selected books in clear print, light in weight, and with due regard to their psychological and therapeutic effects on the patients were chosen and transferred to the hospital. These photographs show Roos Library. The first library was in a room next to Salthouse Pavilion, which I remember later as a chip shop. But in 1956 it was decided to build a new library. 2 library sites were proposed, one next to the cottage homes and one next to the police station. The former was chosen, the land then being used as allotments, and the present library was opened in 1959. In 1958, the council began looking into building a new library on Walney to replace the current library and hall in timber buildings on the promenade. The new community centre and library were finally opened on the 30th of January 1970 by the Mayor, Alderman J.H. Jackson. And Barrow Island also had a library for a short time. 19 Ramsden Dock Road was converted in 1989. As well as the fixed branch libraries, the council decided to introduce a mobile library, and in 1951 a corporation bus was converted at the cost of £750. Books were transferred from Barrow Island and Victoria School libraries on the 5th of October, and the mobile library began visiting Roe Island, Rampside, Ormsgill, Hawcourt, Oxford Street, New Barnes and Biggar Village every week. The first driver and library assistant was Mr. A.E. Todd. So this photograph shows the first mobile library, and this photograph is taken inside showing people choosing their books. Barrow Record Office opened in 1979 in a building built at the back of the library on the playground of St Mary's Roman Catholic School. It was joined to the library by a corridor. In 1998 it was extended into the courtyard between the 2 buildings, and the original research room shown in this photograph and the workroom were turned into extra storage. The Record Office then became Barrow Archive and Local Studies Centre. The recent refurbishment has resulted in the Local Studies Library being moved into the former archive workroom, meaning that it can be open whenever the library is open, and the Archive Centre stays open 3 days a week. The Archive Centre collects archives from the Furness area and is part of the Cumbria Archive Service. Do you remember the moose head which used to hang above the entrance door? It is now in the Dock Museum. It was presented to the council in 1913 by Stephen Hart Jackson Jr. of Ulverston, who had shot it in New Brunswick, Canada, the previous year. Now, newspapers have always formed an important part of the library. Reports do tell that there were 142 different weekly, monthly and daily newspapers, periodicals and magazines. In 1931, the sports pages were removed from the newspapers and stored separately so that a legitimate newsreader is able to peruse his paper without the interference of the habitual reader of the sporting information. That no longer happens. The council minutes reports in February 1941 that after an epidemic of newspaper cutting and stealing, a user had been caught mutilating a periodical in the newspaper room. The user had apologised, but on a reoccurrence of the complaint, the police had been informed and the offender was now in custody awaiting trial, which seems rather harsh. In March, he was fined 20 shillings and he sent a letter to the library expressing his regret and asking to be allowed to use the library, and this was agreed. In 1957, the librarian reported in his annual report about the state of books and said, "In previous issues of this bulletin, appeals have been made to borrowers to take more care of library books so as to economise our book expenditure. These so far as can be judged have not had the slightest effect. People have a naive belief that rules and regulations are very necessary for keeping the other fellow on the straight and narrow, but as far as themselves are concerned, they are an infringement on the freedom of the individual. For the record, may it once more be asserted that heartbreaking numbers of books are ruined because they have been chewed by dogs, scribbled in by infants, splattered with coffee, daubed with jam, carried unprotected through the rain, and so on. It even seems necessary to point out that banana skins do not make ideal bookmarks, and that if a book is dropped on a fire, it will burn. The invention of an indestructible book is long overdue. The librarian did have a sense of humour, I think, and we still do not have indestructible books. So that is a quick history of the library service in Barrow. The recent refurbishment means that we now have a ship with seagulls above it, a palm tree, a glass box, a new teen area, and adult education have moved into the museum upstairs, and it is now being used as a classroom, although it's also a space that we can use for concerts and that sort of thing. So please come into the library and see how things have changed. Thank you.